sliding below the European plate. As the African plate melted inside the deep earth, molten rock rose back to the surface to create what is actually a volcano. Around 3,500 years ago, this volcano did what volcanoes tend to do. It blew up. Unluckily for the Minoans, it was the biggest eruption of the last 10,000 years. Today, you can still trace why the eruption was so devastating in the cliffs around Santorini. This cliff is made entirely of ash and rock spat out by the volcano. It's got distinct layers to it, each of which are from different stages of the eruption. In other words, this rock face is a timeline of events. Climbing this cliff helps understand a disaster that was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. This level here was the start of the eruption. I'm kind of standing on the Minoan land surface, and in the next 5 hours the eruptions threw out an enormous mushroom cloud of debris. They just rained down ash after ash after ash. This stuff is just like a silica glass. It gets into your lungs and it just lacerates your lungs. You just choke on it. This innocent-looking gravel was from the second and the most lethal stage of the eruption. Seawater invaded the volcano, and that mix of water with molten lava produced a series of incredibly violent eruptions that punched a jet of superheated gas and debris high into the atmosphere. As these clouds of hot gas and lava fell back to Earth, they engulfed the outer edges of the island. But incredibly, the worst was still to come. Once the volcano had spewed out everything that was in its guts, the weight of it collapsed into the void below, producing the most enormous blast. And in the death throes of that final blast, there was one last catastrophic flourish. The center of the volcano crashed into the sea. That sudden collapse created a gigantic tsunami, which quickly spread out across the Aegean towards Crete. For a civilization whose strength was in their navy, the tsunami would have been devastating.
It's thought that as the tsunami swept through the Aegean, it engulfed the Minoan harbours, and any boats in them would have been smashed into matchsticks. So perhaps it's not that surprising that not a single boat from the vast Minoan fleet has ever been found.
This was a catastrophe from which the Minoans would never recover.
A long choking ash cloud and a giant tsunami meant that this maritime power was on its knees. With their fleet gone, their population decimated, and their most strategic trading post obliterated, the Minoans went downhill fast. Within a century or so of the eruption, this once great civilization was finished.
The eruption of Santorini was an extreme event, but ancient history is littered with tales of cities destroyed along plate boundaries. And it's not just volcanoes that do the damage. Fault lines are also home to another deadly force of nature. Earthquakes. Over the past 10,000 years, many cities first established to take advantage of fault lines have been flattened. Hierapolis, with its famous health spa, was destroyed by a giant earthquake in AD 60. Jericho, the oldest city in the world, has been hit over 15 times by large earthquakes. Some believe it was this that famously brought its walls tumbling down. Likewise, Petra was abandoned after an earthquake demolished its irrigation system in AD 360. And it continues to this day. In 2003, the city of Bam, famous for its qanats, was devastated by a massive earthquake which killed over 30,000 people. It makes you realise that, in effect, much of human history has centred on a bargain between us and the inner earth. Plate boundaries provide access to resources from deep inside the planet. But live near one, and every now and then, you take a hit. But even the most advanced of our ancestors had no way of explaining this strange coincidence. In fact, it's only in the last 50 years that scientists have finally understood the bargain that was inadvertently struck all those years ago. You can see the theory in action in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This is Kilauea on Hawaii's Big Island. It's one of the most active volcanoes on the planet, because it's fed by a chamber of magma deep inside the earth, called a hotspot. The hotspot has effectively punched a hole in the Pacific Plate, the piece of the Earth's crust on which Hawaii sits. But remove the ocean around Hawaii and something strange is revealed. A chain of mountains stretching along the seabed for over 5,000 kilometers. This line of extinct volcanoes is explained when you realize that the Pacific Plate is continually on the move. As the plate drifts over this stationary hotspot, a volcano forms. But after about 1 million years, the moving plate pulls the volcano away from the hotspot. Meanwhile, another eruption begins, forming a new island. Today, Kilauea is still growing, but it hasn't got long to go. In a few thousand years, it will drift away from the hotspot and eventually disappear beneath the waves. The Hawaiian island chain is a beautiful demonstration of a big idea that explains why plate boundaries bring us extraordinary benefits and terrible hazards in equal measure. It's called plate tectonics. The key is that all the plates which divide the Earth's surface are continually on the move. Where they collide, they crumple the land to form great mountain ranges like the Himalayas.